Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're actually going to review a fragrance from the house of Juliet Has a Gun. The fragrance we're touching on today is called Moscow Mule. Now this is the bottle and the presentation. I'd like to let you guys know before I actually get started that this fragrance was sent to me for the purposes of reviewing, so I did not pay for this fragrance. Translation: if you don't feel that I can be impartial with this fragrance, please feel free. No hard feelings, but click away, and that's pretty much it. I'm here to tell you that I am impartial and will be impartial, so if you trust me, continue on with the review. But with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and get into it. Now, I was really excited to get this bottle only because Moscow Mule is actually my favorite cocktail drink. It's right up there next to my Manhattans and my my old fashions, basically. Those three drinks are my favorite drinks. Two of them obviously with bourbon and whiskey, and this one is vodka. My first time trying a Moscow Mule was actually one of the first times I had gone out with my current wife, my wife, Becky, and her brother. Her brother had come into town, and we had gone to this Russian speakeasy that was close to Houston Street in downtown. And it was, you know, this secretive bar. You kind of go down under this grating, and we went down there, and it was my first time having a Moscow Mule, and I remember being absolutely blown away by it. The ginger, the lime, oh man, it was just a magical concoction to me, and I had down like 7 or 8 of them, and it was consequently one of the very few times in my life that I've ever gotten just really badly drunk. And I remember we left the speakeasy, and my wife and her brother got into a cab. They went back home, and I was going back to my apartment. Rather than take a cab, I thought it would be a great idea to go ahead and just walk all the way back home, which was, at the time, I lived on 53rd Street, so it was a pretty considerable walk. But I did it anyways. Ever since then, it's been my favorite drink, and it's been a favorite drink of this household. My wife and I, you know, we've got our Moscow Mule copper mugs, we've got personalized engraved mugs, and it was the drink at our wedding as well, that we had. So yeah, Moscow Mule is my thing. So when I got this fragrance, I was like, man, I can't wait. When I sprayed it on the other hand, I was immediately like, wait a second. No, this doesn't really remind me of a Moscow Mule. As I started sniffing it a little bit more, I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of lime, but I'm really getting this metallic note, almost this coppery-ish note. So I went back actually and read up on what the description of the fragrance was, and in all fairness, it's an interpretation of the Moscow Mule. So one of the things that they actually heavily emphasized was the copper that's in the fragrance. It's like copper notes that are infused with a Moscow Mule. And that, I think, right there is why I did not think that it smelled like a Moscow Mule, is because while copper is the mug that it's actually served in, you don't taste the copper. You taste the ginger, you taste the lime, to some extent, sometimes you taste the vodka. But anyways, you get that vibe from a Moscow Mule, but you don't get a copper vibe from the Moscow Mule. And this has actually a very heavy copper vibe to it. It's got copper, but it's also got that lime and that citrusy kind of feeling kind of dancing in the background. So if you're looking for a fragrance that is bright, spritzy, and really reminds you of a Moscow Mule, unfortunately, this is not it. But it is a good fragrance in its own right, in that it has that copper feel to it. I've heard that some people have compared it to Dolce & Gabbana's Light Blue, and I see where they're coming from, but I disagree. It kind of has this vibe to it that the citrusy notes do kind of remind you of Dolce & Gabbana's Light Blue, but that's kind of where it ends. That copper note in this really takes off, and it is the fragrance, if you will, and the rest of the notes that actually comprise a Moscow Mule are kind of along for the ride, if you will. They're not the primary notes that actually go with this fragrance. So I did a lot of testing with this fragrance, and here in New York, we're going through a heat wave right now. It's extremely hot. Temperatures are reaching with a feel over 100 degrees, and it has been brutally hot. And I've been spraying it with this. You can get pretty liberal with the sprays with this, but I've been spraying a lot on, and it does pretty well in the heat. It kind of leaves you with this vibe. It's not an overly citrus vibe, like I mentioned before. It has a very interesting and a very unique vibe to it. That copper it's not a heavy metal, but at the same time, it kind of has this lighty-ish feel, but it still has that metallic feel to it. And at the end of the day, it's a pretty decent fragrance for especially the warmer climate and the warmer months. This is actually a good fragrance for going out, during the summer, especially at nighttime. I think is where it really shines and works its best magic. Unfortunately, I would not use this one for the winter or any other scenarios like that. It just doesn't really fit and feel the vibe to it. So in summary, if you're looking for a fragrance that has I've got a good thing. This is a citrus for somebody who does not like citruses. That is what I would put Moscow Mule from Juliet Has a Gun. An overall pretty solid fragrance. So if I'm going to go ahead and give this fragrance a rating, I give this fragrance a rating 3.5 out of 5 stars. So it's a pretty good fragrance that I'm actually putting up there. As many of you know, 2.5 is really the halfway mark for it. So 3.5, it's a pretty good fragrance, and it's one that I would highly suggest that you at least try. I can definitely see there may not be a lot of people who are, if you're looking for a fragrance, again, that smells like a Moscow Mule, this is probably not going to be what you're looking for. There are actually other fragrances that are not named Moscow Mule that smell a little bit closer to it, but this is not the one for it, and it's strictly because of that copper note. This is a good fragrance if you're, again, not necessarily a fan of citruses, but it has a sort of vibe that is more, welcoming. Again, it's a fragrance for a person who doesn't like citruses. A citrus for a person who doesn't like citruses. And again, most fragrances from the House of Juliet Has a Gun are highly unique, and this one is no exception. You go around, there's going to be nobody who smells like you at all. So again, I like the offering. I'm a little bit disappointed that it doesn't smell like the Moscow Mule like I was expecting, but at the end of the day, it still is a pretty good offering. All right, so that's pretty much it, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are on this fragrance, and that's pretty much it. Thank you guys, take care of yourselves, and you guys have a great day.